When you first start looking for businesses to buy, everything looks interesting. You feel overwhelmed. That's why you need an investment thesis. Before you even start searching for a business, you need to have these three pillars nailed down: location, size, and industry. Let's get into it. So let's start with, what's an investment thesis? It's basically like a filter. You want to be able to filter down what it is you're looking for and what you're wanting to buy. It's kind of like when you're doing some online shopping and you apply a filter to really get down to what you're looking for. It prevents wasting time. And lastly, it keeps your emotions out. The business buying process overall is a very emotional thing, both on the buyer and the seller. The seller is selling something that they have poured their heart and soul into, have built it from the ground up, and they're letting that go. The buyer is putting in their retirement fund, their savings, anything they have into this business and looking to grow it and scale it from there. And so it's a very emotional process, and you want to do anything you can to keep those emotions checked, and an investment thesis helps with that. I'll be upfront and say these are expected to evolve. You likely will change at least one, two, or maybe all of your pillars as you go down the rabbit hole of finding that business. So the first pillar, location. You want to think about things like, okay, if I'm the owner of this business and something breaks at 4 a.m, I'm the one that needs to go over there and fix it if I don't have a manager in place or I don't have an employee that's willing to do it. Ultimately, it's your business, so it's your responsibility. So in my example, my first initial location pillar was to find something within my state where I live that was a couple hours away that, if need be, we could go to it and do what we needed to do if something needed to be fixed or we had an issue with employee or what have you. Now, this is something that changed for us. As my wife and I spoke more about it, we realized really what we wanted was something we could run from home, we could run remotely. We both work from home as it is, and there was no way we were willing to go back to an office. So we wanted something that we could run from home. We also love to travel, and we don't want to be tied down to one specific location. So this ended up evolving to looking for a business that could be managed and run from anywhere. So pillar number 2, size. Now this can be based on cash flow or the purchase price, and they go hand in hand. This one is huge. It's big. It's very important. Most buyers do not realize how big of a business they can actually afford. Now let's start with an important metric, and it's called seller discretionary earnings, or SDE. Now, this is a metric used to determine the total financial benefit to the owner, and it's a simple calculation. You take the net income and you add back taxes, interest, depreciation, amortization, the owner's total compensation, and any discretionary expenses that the owner may run through the business. For example, let's say the owner leases a car and he runs that expense through the business, or certain utilities for their personal residence. They run that through the business, which is a very normal thing in the small business world. You would add that back because it's a benefit to the owner and it's something that you will be realizing. So essentially, SDE is the cash flow that will be realized by the business that the new owner could use to pay himself, pay down debt, grow the business, and anything else the new owner wishes to do. So now you need to match the business size to your financing plan. Will you be using an SBA loan? Will you be doing seller financing? Are you buying the business with all cash? So to keep it simple, in this video, I'm just going to talk about what is basically the most standard thing to do, which is using an SBA loan and putting down 10% equity towards the purchase price. Now, you need to work backwards from what you can afford. For example, if you have $100,000 of your savings, retirement fund, investment fund, whatever it is, you have $100,000 that you're willing to put down on a business, the total acquisition price you can afford is $1 million based on that 10% down rule. So small businesses typically sell for anywhere from 2.5 times to 4 times SDE. So in this example, you can afford a $1 million business. You're going to look for SDE between $250,000 to $400,000 based on that 2.5 to 4 times multiple. Now, let's put it all together because this is a key aspect of your investment thesis. In our example, if you have $100,000 to put down using an SBA loan that requires 10% down payment from the buyer, you can afford a $1 million business that will generate you between $250,000 and $400,000 of SDE. Now, I know a lot of people say, hey, I want to start with something small. I want to buy something that's just cash flowing $50,000, $100,000. Now that's a dangerous game to play. Typically, those types of businesses, you're buying a job, you're not buying a business. There aren't systems in place. There's not a manager in place. You're really grinding a lot to run that business. So I think it's actually safer to buy bigger. Now, the $250,000, $300,000 range and over is really the sweet spot for small business owners, where you're able to pay yourself a salary, service your debt, and use anything excess to help grow the business. It's always better to go big than to go small, because the bigger businesses will have systems and managers in place to help you run that business. So for example, for me, I wanted a business that could pay me a salary and service my debt. So I was looking for a business that had an SDE of 250,000 all the way to 750,000. Now, the last pillar, industry. This prevents you from just chasing down random listings without having any sort of idea what sort of business you actually want to buy. So what to look for in industry? You want something that's stable, that has simple operations, has repeatable demand, is not overly technical. You want to avoid the hype industries, the AI space, anything in the tech space, anything with, that has fads, the Labubu's, all that kind of stuff. You want to avoid that. Now, if you come from a specific background, for example, marketing, you will likely be inclined to look for a small business in the marketing or advertising space. So in my instance, this was the one pillar that I was willing to not be so strict on and have tons of flexibility on. I was fairly strict with the location, wanting it to be remotely, and with the size of the cash flow coming to me. I just knew that I wanted a service-based business. I did not want to deal with retail or restaurants or manufacturing that had overly complex systems and operations in place. I wanted a service-based business that was recession resilient. HVAC, plumbing, electrical, home services, healthcare services, those sorts of things. So I ended up kind of changing this a little bit to, wanting something that had a manager in place that could help run the business if I was going to be running this remotely. They didn't want to buy something that was 1,000 miles away and had no manager in place, and I was running it remotely and having to fly back and forth to that location. That's not what I was looking for. So I ended up having to pivot a little bit to look for something that had a manager in place. And fortunately, it did work out. Now, I'd love for you guys to get your investment thesis together and put it down in the comments. I'd love to see them. Once you have this down, you can start filtering your deals, contacting brokers to request more information, and you'll be on your way to purchasing a business, submitting an LOI, moving forward. Now that you know how to build your own investment thesis, in the next video, I'll walk you through the key terms to include in an LOI, and I'll use the business that I'm under contract for as an example to show you exactly what I did.